My name is Naomi Blake. I was 31 years old working as an intake coordinator at a pediatric clinic in Minneapolis when I found out I apparently owned a house I'd never seen and was 3 months behind on a mortgage I had never signed. The call came in on a Wednesday afternoon. I was finalizing patient records, half listening to my coworker joke about her toddler's latest meltdown, when my cell buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something about it didn't feel like spam. I stepped into the hallway and answered. Miss Blake, this is Nathan from North Lakes Credit Union. I'm calling regarding your past due mortgage on the Highland property. You're 3 months delinquent. I'm sorry? I said, blinking hard. What mortgage? He repeated the amount. $623,000. For a second, I couldn't speak. I lived in a rented one-bedroom near Hennepin Avenue. I had no savings for a down payment, no cosigner, no delusions about homeownership in this economy. This had to be a scam. But then he read the address, Highland Avenue. The name didn't click until it did. My sister Alyssa and her husband Gavin had moved into a gorgeous craftsman home on Highland just a few months ago. I'd visited once. We'd eaten moose cake on the patio, and suddenly my body went cold. I ended the call as politely as I could and locked myself in the staff restroom. I pulled up my credit report with trembling fingers. The account was there. My name, my social security number, my address updated to their house. In that moment, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call my sister. I just stared at my reflection in the mirror, watching my own face shift slowly from confusion to realization. This wasn't a clerical error. It wasn't a joke. Someone had stolen my identity to buy a $600,000 home, and I already knew who. And what terrified me most was that the people who raised us would probably beg me not to do a damn thing about it. After the call, everything around me blurred. The clinic's cheerful walls, the sound of children's laughter from the waiting area, even the hum of printers and nurses chatting. It all faded into a background I could no longer inhabit. I finished the day on autopilot, smiling when necessary, nodding when prompted, but inside, something had cracked. That evening, back in my apartment, I sat on my worn-down green couch and stared at the ivy spilling over my windowsill. I'd raised those plants from clippings, revived them through Minnesota winters, talked to them on long nights after hard days. My little home wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, uncomplicated, honest, just like how I'd lived. I'd never had much interest in keeping up with anyone, not even Alyssa. She was 3 years older, and from the time we were kids, she was the one with the spotlight. Homecoming queen, real estate license by 22, husband with a finance degree, luxury SUV, curated Instagram. And me? I processed new patient intakes and scheduled surgeries. I owned one pair of heels and used my PTO for dentist appointments. I didn't think of myself as boring. I thought of myself as peaceful. But peace doesn't make headlines at family dinners. Every other Sunday, we all gathered at my parents' home in St. Paul. Dad would uncork a bottle of Cabernet and declare it too young, while Mom set out her famous lasagna, insisting we take seconds before we'd even touched our first bites. Alyssa always arrived late and made an entrance. Big laugh, big stories, big earrings. She would compliment my shoes, then ask if I'd thought about moving somewhere more grown up than a rental. I'd laugh it off. I always did. It was easier to explain how I'd chosen stability over show. They didn't ask much about my life. No one ever said it, but I knew I didn't quite fit their idea of success. I had no ring, no promotion stories, no beachfront vacation photos. I just had bills I paid on time and a life I wasn't ashamed of. And now that life was hanging by a thread. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake wondering how long Alyssa had planned this. Had she flipped through my mail while I was in the shower, taking pictures of my ID while I was setting the table for Christmas dinner? Had Gavin known? Of course he had. He was the one who bragged about knowing how to make paperwork disappear. I was supposed to go over for dinner that coming weekend. Alyssa had texted earlier that week. Bringing dessert. Hope you're still plant sitting for us next month. The audacity of it made my jaw clench. They were living in a house that had my name on the deed, and I hadn't even been allowed to pick the wallpaper. I showed up at North Lakes Credit Union the next day with my ID, my social security card, and a pit in my stomach so dense it made breathing feel like work. The branch manager, a man named Evan Carlson, met me in a conference room with gray walls and a potted plant that looked too perfect to be real. He slid a folder across the table with a professionalism I both appreciated and resented. Inside were loan documents, closing disclosures, income statements, all with my name, my address, and a signature that almost looked like mine. Almost. This was all processed online, Evan explained. Uploaded documents, digital signatures, income verification. The income stated here is generous. I leaned forward. How much? $198,000 a year. I let out a breathless laugh. I make 42. His tone shifted. Miss Blake, if you're saying you didn't apply for this loan, this appears to be fraud, identity theft. You'll need to contact the police and start the dispute process immediately. I want copies of everything, I said, my voice calmer than I felt. As I left the bank, I clutched the folder like a detonator. I didn't go home. I drove to a strip mall coffee shop, ordered a black coffee I didn't drink, and began reading each page like it might tell me how my sister had become a stranger. The next few days blurred into phone calls and quiet rage. I filed a fraud alert with the credit bureaus. My score, once a clean 726, had cratered to 542. There were not just mortgage delinquencies, but a home equity line, 3 maxed-out credit cards, and a personal loan, all under my name, all linked to an email address off by a few digits, naomiblakempl.gmail.com instead of naomi.blake@icloud.com. Easy to miss, easy to explain away, unless you knew exactly what you were doing. I began searching for proof, the kind that couldn't be laughed off over wine at dinner. A coworker's husband worked in digital forensics and pointed me to a handwriting analyst who compared the mortgage signatures to copies of my real signature from my nursing license and lease agreement. These are forged, he said. Clever, but forged. Someone was being careful, too careful. Could you testify to that? I could. Then came the part I wasn't proud of. I started snooping. I wasn't technically entitled to look into Alyssa's financial history, but I knew where to look for cracks. Her Instagram might have shown champagne and summer hats, but it also showed too many vacations for a couple who had supposedly just downgraded careers. A friend of mine from college worked at a luxury dealership downtown. She remembered Alyssa coming in to lease a new Mercedes. She looked amazing, but when they ran her credit, it tanked the application. Gavin had to pay in cash. That same friend leaned in and added, he didn't look thrilled about it. Their marriage, once a glossy feature spread in our family's social scrapbook, was fraying. But what stunned me most wasn't the money, it was the intent. They weren't just borrowing against my name, they were setting me up for collapse. Police would later confirm that searches from Gavin's old laptop included terms like declare bankruptcy in someone else's name and can you abandon a stolen identity legally? That wasn't desperation, that was strategy. By the end of the week, I'd gathered enough to make a case, not just to the authorities, but to the people who taught me that family comes first. And still, I hesitated. Not because I didn't believe they deserved consequences, but because I knew the moment I said the word police, the people who loved us both would ask me to stay quiet. Sunday dinner was lasagna, as always. My mother had texted the night before asking if I wanted her to pick up that mousse cake I liked from Sage and Willow. I told her not to bother. Alyssa already had dessert covered. Of course she did. I spent nearly an hour getting dressed, not because I cared how I looked, but because I wanted to feel fortified. I settled on a navy blouse and dark slacks, professional, unshakable, not the little sister in borrowed shoes, not tonight. The manila folder in my bag felt heavier with each step toward the door. When I arrived, everything looked exactly the same. My dad in his recliner with a glass of Pinot, my mom in an apron floating from kitchen to table, Gavin was helping plate the garlic bread, and Alyssa, of course, made her entrance 5 minutes late. Hair perfectly curled, cream silk blouse untucked just enough to look effortless. She greeted me like nothing was wrong. "Naomi, finally! You look so put together. Promotion I haven't heard about?" I smiled. "No promotion, just dressing for the occasion." Dinner began like 1,000 others before it. My brother Sam and his wife were there, chatting about their renovation. Alyssa bragged about the sunroom in her new house, catching golden hour just right. My mother laughed. My father poured more wine. The mousse cake sat chilling in the fridge. Its presence hung over me like a dare. As the plates cleared, I reached into my bag and wrapped my hand around the folder. My chest felt tight, but not from fear. There was only clarity now. I waited until everyone was quiet, forks resting, mouths full of wine or words unsaid. "There's something I need to talk to you all about," I said. A pause. My mother glanced up from refilling Sam's glass. "Of course, honey. Everything okay?" Alyssa leaned in, smiling. "Is this about dating? Did someone finally make you cancel your Friday plant watering routine?" The table chuckled softly. I set the folder on the table. The silence that followed was different, heavy, intentional. "This is a police report," I said. "I filed it 3 days ago." My father straightened. "Police? What's happened?" I looked directly at Alyssa. "It's about identity theft, fraud, the purchase of a home using my name, a mortgage I didn't authorize, documents I didn't sign." Her smile flickered. "Naomi, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the house on Highland Avenue," I said, "the one you're living in." My mother let out a quiet, confused gasp. "But that's their new place, isn't it?" I nodded. "It is, and according to the paperwork, it also happens to be mine. The mortgage, the credit lines, the debt, it's all under my name." Alyssa laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "That's ridiculous. How would I even do that?" "Forgery. False income claims, using an email address one character off from mine, submitting everything from your old condo's IP. Need more?" I opened the folder and slid the documents forward. Gavin stood up fast, knocking his chair slightly. "We don't have to do this here." My father's voice cut through the tension, low and unfamiliar. "Sit down, Gavin." Alyssa's face had gone pale. She glanced at the papers but didn't touch them. "It was supposed to be temporary," she said finally. "You stole my identity." "You weren't using it," she snapped. "You live in a shoebox. You make less than half of what you deserve. We just needed time. Once Gavin's practice bounced back—" "Don't," I said. "Don't you dare turn this into some twisted rescue mission. You lied. You built a life out of mine." Gavin exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I told you it would come back on us." "You went along with it," I said. "I didn't sign the papers, but you knew. You used the cards. You paid for a Mercedes with stolen credit." My mom stood trembling. "Alyssa, tell me this isn't true." Alyssa looked at her like a child caught in a lie too big to deny. "We were drowning," she said. "You all expected so much from me. The house, the image, the lifestyle. We couldn't keep up." My dad stood too. "So you buried your sister to stay above water." There were tears now. Alyssa's mascara smeared just slightly. "I didn't think it would go this far. I thought we'd fix it before anyone found out." "You were planning to file bankruptcy in my name," I said quietly. "You were never going to fix anything." The room fell silent again. Finally, my father said it. "Get out, both of you." "Dad." "No," he said. "We'll deal with the fallout, but you won't do it under this roof." Alyssa started to say something, then stopped. Gavin took her arm. They left without another word. My mother sank into her chair. "I don't know who she is anymore." I didn't answer because neither did I. The fallout came fast, louder than I expected. By Monday morning, the local news had picked up the story. Prominent realtor and financial advisor under investigation for identity theft. The article didn't name me, but the address was listed, and anyone who'd ever sat at our dinner table could connect the dots. Texts poured in. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years messaged, "Is it true?" A former coworker from my first job commented on a post with just, "Damn." I turned off notifications and left my phone in a drawer. My parents, on the other hand, didn't retreat so easily. Mom called that Wednesday, her voice thin with exhaustion. "Your dad won't go to his golf group," she said. "He says he can't face them." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said evenly. "She's still your sister, Naomi." I stayed quiet. "She made a mistake, a terrible one, but there must be a way to handle this. Quietly." There it was, the word they all kept dancing around. Quietly. It wasn't the first time I'd been asked to be quiet for the sake of peace. Growing up, when Alyssa threw tantrums or bent the truth, I was told to take the high road. I did, again and again, until that road turned into a cliff. "She didn't make a mistake, Mom," I said. "She made a series of deliberate decisions. She had every chance to stop." My mother sighed. "She could go to prison." "I know." "And the kids." I flinched. Harper and Reed, 5 and 7, bright, funny, innocent. They didn't ask for any of this. "Think about them," she said softly. "Do you want them to grow up visiting their mother through glass?" It was the first time I wavered. I didn't want revenge. I wanted restoration of my credit, my name, my life. But was justice worth the collateral damage? I didn't have an answer until Stephanie showed up, unannounced, with 2 iced coffees and a look that said she wasn't buying my silence. "They're trying to guilt you," she said. "Don't let them. They're scared. And the kids, I get it. But let me ask you something." She leaned forward. "If this had been a stranger who did this to you, would you even hesitate?" "No." "So why does biology give her a discount?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I already knew the answer. That weekend, the district attorney's office called. They were moving forward with formal charges. They asked if I wanted to provide a statement before the hearing. I told them yes. That night, I reopened the drawer and looked at my phone again. One unread message from my mom. "You have every right to be angry, but please don't let this ruin all of us." I typed and deleted 5 replies before finally sending just one sentence. She did that, not me. 9 months after my name was used to build someone else's dream, I signed a mortgage document. My name, my choice, my terms. No forged income, no ghost email addresses, no lies. Just me, a pen, and a truth I had earned the hard way. The irony pressed in from all sides. My sister had hijacked my identity to buy a life she couldn't afford, and now I was doing the very thing she claimed I wasn't aiming high enough to achieve. I'd bought a modest 2-bedroom in Bloomington. The backyard was patchy, the appliances outdated, and the mailbox dented. But it was mine. Paid for with real money, real credit, and hard-earned peace. Alyssa and Gavin pleaded guilty. 18 months in federal prison for her, 12 for him. Their social media perfect life collapsed under the weight of court records and press coverage. I didn't attend the sentencing. I had no interest in watching the aftermath. I was too busy rebuilding what they tried to dismantle. When I moved in, Stephanie brought champagne and a welcome mat that read, "Not today, identity thieves." My parents came separately. My mother brought lasagna in a baking dish I recognized from childhood. My father handed me a fern in a clay pot and said, "I didn't say it before, but you were right to do what you did." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. A few weeks later, I received a letter addressed in pink marker, sealed with a unicorn sticker. It was from Harper. "Dear Aunt Naomi, I know Mommy did something really bad. I still love her, but I love you too. I drew a flower for your new house because Mommy says you grow good plants. Can I come visit one day?" I stared at that note for a long time. The betrayal had nearly broken me, but this wasn't a story about ruin. It was a story about planting new roots. I may never forgive my sister, but I don't need to live in that shadow anymore. This house, flawed as it is mine. It was built on truth, not theft, on boundaries, not guilt. And for the first time, I feel safe inside my own name.